Okay, so we've been talking about giving, well, not really giving, about managing finances. Okay, managing finances from a New Testament point of view or from a biblical point of view, right? So remember, just a quick recap about John chapter 8 and how it says, continue in my words and you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. That's still the process we're following. In fact, that's the process we'll follow till we draw our last breath. The process we should be following. Continue in my words, and you will know the truth. Then you will be my true disciples. So, true disciples do what? They sue. Okay? They study, they understand, they embrace. Okay? They study, they understand, they embrace. True disciples search, they update, and they execute. So you've got double sue going on there. So we search and study, we understand, we update, we execute, we embrace and execute the things that we learn. Even if those things challenge us. And I can't say enough about this because sometimes we might take it for granted that we've crossed a certain line of I will never really struggle with the word of God. It's amazing some of the things that are so embedded in our upbringing, our cultures, our preferences even, that will sometimes stand against the word of God, and we will sometimes defend those things, even though the word of God will say different. So when we study, we intentionally embrace what we discover, even if it goes against everything in us. We're saying, well, I have chosen to follow Jesus. And so Jesus said, therefore, okay, let's do it then. That sort of thing. Even if you have to do it with an exasperation, let's do it then. Because Jesus said, okay. And that's it. We sue. We prosecute the idea to the limit. We go for it. Okay. So we've been looking at finances, and the big principles that we settled on in the end was that be alert and guard your heart against all forms of greed, and don't assume that you're immune to it. Okay? Be alert always. Remember, I brought out that study of the term that is used there is one of continuous action. Be always alert and on guard against all forms of greed, and don't assume that you're immune to it. Okay. First big principle. The second big principle is that at some time or another, you're going to have to dispossess yourself somewhat. You're going to have to sell something of yours and give it to the poor. No, actually, that's sort of down the line. That's about the second thing. That's about the third thing I meant. The second big principle is this, and I'm going just off my head here, is don't store your treasure on earth. Store your treasure in heavenly places. So first we guard our hearts continuously. Secondly, continuously we store treasure upstairs, so to speak. Don't store your treasure on earth. Store it in heaven. Two major guiding principles. Okay. And then we go on to how do we do that? There will be times when we have to sell something, the treasure, in order to transfer it abroad to heaven. Okay, you can't hold on to it here close to your chest and still claim that you've moved it to heavenly treasures. There'll be times you have to do that. But then on an ongoing basis as well, we also meet the needs of those who are less privileged than us on an ongoing basis. So 3 large principles there. Guard your heart, move treasure, and meet the needs of less privileged by you will have to dispossess yourself sometime or another. Okay? There have been times we've had to make just one example. Because Paul talks about follow my example. It's not always a prideful thing to show an example. That besides, the person reminded me of it recently as well, the person we did this for. There was a year when we usually take an annual holiday and we like to go somewhere we haven't been to before. Costs a bit of money, okay? But the Lord has always provided for us. But this particular year, we said to ourselves, I suggested to my family, I said, look, rather than going abroad we were going to Turkey that year. I said, rather than go to Turkey for 2 weeks, as we would do, how about we go for only a week? We come back, and then we take this other family who was really actually quite poor now. They haven't always been poor, but the man lost his job and there's nothing in the family and they're just really all locked up. And the kids are just in the house throughout the whole. How about we just take them with us on a not so international holiday? Let's go to Ireland. Okay? And cost us a bit more than the whole budget would have cost, but at the same time, we've had our time away as well. And we said, let's do that for somebody else. And we did that 2 years running. The first year we went to Ireland, the second year we went to Scotland with them. And those are 2 of the most memorable holidays we've had. Well, let's just say they were very memorable holidays. I haven't really measured them. The Irish one, we went to see the Giant's Causeway. We went on the rope bridge. We drove here and there. I was so memorable. I still remember some things so clearly about Ireland because of that holiday and the time that we had together. It cost us. It's money that we would have enjoyed spending on ourselves. We worked hard for that money. But we did it twice in a row. And we've done a few other things like that have cost us. It's just, you can't deny the cost of it. It's not some metaphorical cost. It's real money. And it's thousands we're talking about. So, all right. So sometimes it's going to cost you to look after somebody else. More than just, hello, how are you doing? Oh, I'm sorry about that. And all this, and you've ended there and say, I'll pray for you. They need food. Okay, do you know sometimes rich people need food? Well, people who appear rich, sometimes they're broke. Sometimes people who were once rich are now broke. It's amazing how many of such people Margaret and I have had to help now and again through our years, like people who we would have envied at one time, like, oh, they're doing so well. And then you find out that actually they're broke. At least now they're broke. They're really broke. You just say, okay, it's not much, but here it is. So my point is, we've been through it and we will go through more of it. Sometimes you're just going to have to dispossess yourself. Something you would have spent on yourself, it would hurt you to even spend it, but you want to do so. Okay? Sometimes you're just going to have to do that. And that's part of the large principle there. And the very first principle will help you do it well. Be alert and guard yourself against all forms of greed. So when the time comes when you know you should be selling that stuff to help somebody else, and your flesh or your body or your mind is saying, oh no, really, that's one form of greed. It's not only when we pile it up like that guy in the Barnes that it's a form of greed. Okay, so we kind of covered that over the last few weeks. I didn't record that. I think I recorded only one session of that. But if you've taken notes, you remember most of what was said. Okay, today I want to round up the whole finances thing. It's going to be a little bit of a marathon here. but it's good. It's going to be a bit of a marathon. Got a few scriptures to look at. I would try not to spend too much time on each one because we've actually done this before here. I've looked at this area before. Okay, so first place I want to start with is that the Bible teaches us that we should work and earn to meet our own needs. Work, earn money to meet your own needs.
Can we ask a question?
Sure.
I was thinking about that this morning, and does that apply to everybody, male and female alike, husband and wife alike, and all of that?
Now that is a question that's yes and no. Yes and no and half no. But it's a question that might distract us a little bit. But let's answer it.
Okay, so let me tell you why, because I was listening to Naomi's story, and Naomi's husband and sons died, and she was left without any means.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking of this day and age. What happens when a person is left with nothing, and there's nothing in society that has that something redeemer thing that they had. So
okay. So for us today, there's an aspect of what does the Bible say, what does the Bible teach, and the particular example you've used, and then where are we today? How do we apply it? How do we apply what we learn from the scriptures? So the first answer is yes. Everybody should work to meet their needs. All right, should work to meet their needs, especially if you are the one looking after you. This is where I say half no. So a single woman like my daughter, 28 years old, she's in London, she's the one looking after herself. Okay? She should work and earn and look after herself. Now, Tim, come and shut the door, please. In some other traditions or earlier traditions, especially in the Bible, Old Testament tradition, and even in the time of Jesus, because that really was Old Testament until he rose from the dead, women were looked after, mostly looked after. But we have evidence that not every woman was looked after like that. Okay? They were mostly looked after. Hence, the story you've given there, Naomi was looked after, her daughter-in-law was looked after as well. So when her sons died, they were bereft, But then, when they got back, Ruth decided that she needed to work. When they got back to Bethlehem and they were suffering, she said, look, Mom, we're going to have to sort ourselves somehow. So she went to work, which is where she ended up meeting Boaz. If the thing with Boaz had not worked out the way it worked out, she would have carried on working. So people who have to look after themselves have to work and earn and look after themselves. But the other side of the half no is this. Okay, before I go into that, we have the Proverbs 31 woman. Is it 31 or 30? I always confuse myself with that one. But we know which woman we're talking about, right? Who rises up early, who sorts this out, buys a land, invests here, invests there, sorts things out. So we know clearly that there are examples of women who worked hard and earned money and had a resource. Okay? But what we do know as well, both historically and biblically, is that such women, their resources were for the family. It wasn't just for personal security in case my husband dies, sort of thing. It's indeed actually more of to honor my husband. That's why I said, that's another matter entirely, because that's going to take another set of teaching in itself. Why would you say that? It was in the sense of honoring the husband. And so what she brought home there was that. But nevertheless, the important thing is that she worked, she earned, and such a good husband would give her the freedom and liberty to do whatever she had with her money. Okay? So the answer is yes, and it's sort of half no in the sense of if you're looked after, if you're well looked after as a woman as a wife or an unmarried woman, then you don't have to work like that outside to earn money if you're well looked after. That's biblical standard. But it is another teaching on its own. You don't have to. But it's no sin too either, because that woman we just described was married. The Proverbs 31 woman was married and she was working. It was evident that she not only worked in the house, but she was working in investments and making money. So you can make money. But the whole idea that then comes into it of modern day times of financial independence. You hear of women being strong and financially independent. The Bible does not actually teach that. Okay. That sense. Not that she can't be, but that reliance on it. That ideology is not taught. So I hope that makes a bit of sense, my answer there. But yeah, that's all the answer I have for that. Everybody should work and earn to meet their own needs. But more than that, and I'm going to come to that a little bit later, but I might as well preempt myself, there is also the issue of community. For the Old Testament saints, or for the life of Israel, shall we say, there was something about community. Some of them fell through the gap, fair play, as in, ended up being destitute and whatnot. But by and large, family structures were such that nobody was supposed to fall through the gap. You were supposed to belong to a family, which is supposed to belong to a clan, which is supposed to belong to a tribe. And nobody was supposed to be destitute, not according to the word of God. There shall be no destitute in my house, says the Lord. Nobody was supposed to go without food, drink, shelter, warmth, affection, and all those things, deprivation of life. Nobody's supposed to do that. Some fell through the gaps. Fair play. Okay, so listen now. So even in Naomi's example, for instance, they came back to Bethlehem and Ruth had to go to work. But the same Boaz that rescued her said to Ruth that actually there's somebody else in line who should have married you before I can even try and do that. Let's settle with that fella first. So there were people there who were supposed to be looking after these women and they were not. Biblically, that guy was supposed to be caring for this woman, but he was not. And in the end, he said, I can't even marry her. I don't have the money. I'm not doing it. The boy said, okay, let's sign the agreement. You're not going to come back later and say there's trouble here. So they signed it up and then he married Ruth and everything was okay. So there's always supposed to be somebody looking after you. New Testament principle follows the same thing. We're never supposed to be so alone that you're destitute. There's always supposed to be somebody looking after you, and you're always supposed to be looking after somebody. Materially, I mean. Okay? So none of you here, at least those of you in here, should ever get to a place where your landlord's evicting you before I know about it. Okay? Because that's what I'm here for, partly. That's what Margaret's here for. That's what you're there for. And so people fall through the gaps sometimes, either pride, guilt, ignorance, we don't look after each other, blah, blah. But it's not meant to be like that in the house of God. Okay. Nevertheless, we're all supposed to work and meet our own needs. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 7. I hope I answered that a bit, Margaret. Okay. 2 Thess 3, 7. For you yourselves know how you ought to follow our example. This is Paul writing. That's his example. Because we did not act in an undisciplined manner amongst you. So first thing we'll pick from that is discipline. He said, our example to you is that we're not undisciplined. Discipline. You've got to take charge of yourself. That's what discipline is. We did not act in an undisciplined manner. Nor did we eat anyone's bread without paying for it. Paul saying, there's no time I ate without paying for it. Okay? Nobody's got anything over here. And I work hard. But with labor and hardship, we kept working night and day, so that we will not be a burden to any of you. This is the apostle. I think somewhere, okay, verse 9, he says it. Not because we do not have the right to this, but in order to offer ourselves as a model for you, so that you will follow our example. He's saying, actually, we have the right to be fed and clothed and housed by you. And that's part of why many, especially the sort of more traditional denominations, will always offer a manse or a vicarage for their ministers. It just comes with it. Our friends in London right now, Tim and Anne-Marie West, they've been here before. White guy, black wife, He's a Baptist minister now. This is his first church. Got offered a church in London. Comes with a house. Comes with a 4-bedroom house. All freshly decorated. We slept there last weekend. Nice and everything. And they don't have to pay a penny. And the church probably pays the council tax as well and everything. And they will get a salary. I want that job too. And so the money they made from selling off their house in Harlow, they've invested it somewhere so that it will be useful in the future, blah, 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 blah. And this is where it comes. Paul is saying, I have the right to be paid by you guys. But I'm not going to exercise that right. I work hard night and day so that I won't be a burden to all of you. Why? Because I want to be an example to you that this is what discipline is. Work hard. Make money. Don't be a burden to anybody. That's the example. Don't be a burden, not even to the system. Because the more of us that draw from the system, the less other people can draw from it. But we know that's a bit warped, don't we? We know it's not always going to the deserving, and we won't major on that today, okay? But particularly to ourselves, to other believers, to your own community, to your own clan and tribe, which in this case are Christians and believers. We're supposed to be looking after each other. I'll show you in a minute. It says, don't be a burden to anybody. Verse 10, for even when we were with you, we used to give you this order. It's an imperative. It's not a suggestion. If anyone is not willing to work, then he is not to eat either.
Amen.
Okay? And that applies to everybody. Young ones and older ones. See, I'm a bit rude sometimes, yeah? So I remember Aaron was here. Aaron, he was here, and I asked him, so what do you do? What work do you do? And he struggled to answer that question. How old is he? 18. And he's not in full-time education?
No.
He should be working. It starts next week. Yay! Well done, Aaron. But you should be working. You're either being educated for something or you're contributing meaningfully to something. Okay? Now you can take a gap. Everybody needs a rest now and again. Okay? But that's how it is. It says you cannot be a burden to other people, especially as an adult. 18 plus, which everybody is always keen to be, right? I'm an adult now, you can't tell me what to do. Well, blooming pay my mortgage then. Yeah, go shopping for the family without anyone asking you to. Just bring back all the bags and say, Mom, I shopped, I filled all the cupboards, and I'm paying the mortgage this month as well. Then we'll know you're an adult. I remember after the first year, a lady moved out, she came back saying, this whole adult thing is highly overrated. This whole adulting thing is too much. Because now you have to think of insurance, you have to think of this, that. Paul says, discipline. Say, I'm doing all this to show you an example, not because I don't have a right to it, okay? If you will not work, you don't eat either. For we hear that some among you are leading an undisciplined life, doing no work at all, but acting like busybodies. Now, such persons we command, he says again. We give you an order and we command them and exhort in the Lord Christ Jesus to work in quiet fashion and eat their own bread. So yes, we're supposed to work. Yes, Rena, it's okay to work. You're looking after yourself. You have that responsibility for a child right now until a man, if you desire it, comes into your life, who is going to be an umbrella for you and can say, okay, he can say, okay, you don't have to. But then that doesn't mean he can stop you from working. He can only say you don't have to. But if he doesn't wish you to, then it's something you really have to discuss very seriously. But again, as I say, that's another message on its own. Okay? But for now, you're doing a great job. You're working, you're bringing in the money, you're sorting yourself and your son out. Absolutely. And you're not relying on anybody and being a burden on anybody that I know of. No. So that's it. Everybody work to eat. Okay? Somewhere else it says that let him that stole steal no more, but rather work something that is useful with his hands. Why? So that he can also have something to give to other people. I forgot to add that scripture here, and I don't know where it is offhand. We can search for it later. But it's saying that work, not just for yourself, but so you can give to other people. If you don't work, you can't give to somebody. But it's saying you must always be able to give to somebody. So we need to work. Okay. Next, keep track of this time here. Way behind. I have to cover the balance next week. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 18. Ecclesiastes. Now, Ecclesiastes is also called the preacher, and it is where this guy was a full-time philosopher, Solomon. Like he was just examining and appraising all sorts of things. He was just assessing his life, the world, upside downness of it, topsy-turvy, the craziness, the goodness. So not everything in Ecclesiastes is good to follow. By the way, I just thought I'd drop that in there.
What number, sorry? 13?
5.
5.
Verse 18. There are some good stuff in there, and there are some not so good stuff in there, but it's all the ruminations of a man's, of a philosopher, theological philosopher, saying, how come things are like this? How come things are like this? This is my conclusion on the matter, okay? 5:18. He says, here is what I have seen to be good and fitting. I like this bit. To eat, to drink, to enjoy oneself in all one's labor in which he toils under the sun during the few years of his life which God has given him, for this is his reward. Okay? The bit I want to pick out at this point is all one's labor in which he toils under the sun. So there is a labor to be labored, or shall we say a labor to be toiled. There is a hardship to be experienced in making wealth. There's a hardship to be experienced in making wealth. There's Margaret and Renner there, making all that stuff there, creating it, bottling it, and then they have to market it, and they have to make phone calls, they have to sell stuff and this and go to markets and all that. There's a hardship that comes with making wealth. Especially when you don't want to rely on someone just giving you a payday check. Not everybody wants to work for somebody, in which case you have to work even harder. If you don't want to work for somebody and get a pay you have to work even harder. All right, to be your own boss. Okay, but it says there is something about labor. Furthermore, as for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, he has also empowered him to eat from them and to receive his reward and rejoice in his labor. This is the gift of God. For he will not often consider the years of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the gladness of his heart. So it's okay to work hard, to make wealth, to enjoy your wealth. Okay? So we've given ourselves those overarching principles of always be on alert about all forms of greed, transferring your treasure to heavenly places. But the Bible also teaches that it's okay to make money or to make wealth and to enjoy your life. There's nothing wrong with a nice holiday. Nothing wrong with a nice jumper. There's nothing wrong with a nice right pair. I have to throw most of my socks away now. There's nothing. Margaret's probably going, yeah, about time. There's nothing wrong with nice things. There's everything wrong with only thinking about yourself. Or when you're buying for yourself, you buy the nicest, plushest, softest, nicest thing. But when you're buying for somebody else, you go to Matalan. Although they do make some nice stuff. Some of my Matalan shirts have lasted the longest. They just retain their shape and their color the longest, and they were cheap. So cheap has little to do with quality sometimes, but I'm just, you know what I mean. So it says it's all right to work hard, to make that money, make the wealth, and enjoy yourself. Further, in Ecclesiastes chapter 9, let's look at one more, chapter 9. So we've confirmed now that labor is good, discipline is good, working hard is good. In fact, Paul says we kept working night and day. Fella would preach through the day, sometimes through the night, and then whatever other time he has, he'll be making tents with other tent makers. He was in a cooperative, and he got very little sleep. He said that somewhere else. He said, sleepless nights. We just went many nights without sleep. Because he's working, he's preaching, and he's saying, no, I know you want to pay me, but you're not paying me. That's all right. I'm going to show you an example how to do life well. He was not entitled. Ecclesiastes 9:7. Ecclesiastes 9:7. After examining everything, well, a lot of things, the preacher says, seize life. And I'm reading from, I think, is it TPT or Message here? I didn't even put that there. I copied it over, but I didn't put which version. But I know it's not the NASB. Seize life. Eat bread with gusto. Drink wine with a robust heart. Oh, yes. God takes pleasure in your pleasure. God takes pleasure in your pleasure. When you're happy, it makes God happy. When you're really like, yes, that was a lovely day. I think God is smiling. Oh yes, dress festively every morning. Don't skimp on colors and scarves. Relish life with the spouse that you love. Yeah, I like that one. Relish life with the spouse you love. Each day and every day of your precious life, relish life with the spouse you love. Each day is God's gift. It's all you get in exchange for the hard work of staying alive. Make the most of each one. It's hard work staying alive sometimes, isn't it? There's so many dangers you have to escape. The work you have to do. Some of the work you don't even like the work. Some of the work you do, you don't even like it. It's hard work. That's why you should enjoy some of it. In the doctrine of the tithes, there's a particular tithe that they were supposed to bring, but eat it themselves. They were supposed to bring it, and then everybody gets together. It was just one massive big festival. Bring the tithes, and we have food and drink, and everybody just eats. Then they are senseless. And God is going, yeah, eat, drink, enjoy your lives. Yeah, there are about 3 or 4 different tithes. It's not just one. We might look at that sometime. It doesn't apply much to us in the New Testament, but there are correlations. There are things we can think of, So he says, enjoy yourself. Make the most of each life. Whatever turns up, verse 10, grab it and do it, and heartily, whatever turns up. I remember when we were moving to Wales, and one of my friends said to me, you're not going to get a good job in Wales, are you? Maybe his prophecy was what came to pass. I said, they speak a different language. Look at it sensibly. What are you doing? And I said to him, look, I feel like we have to obey this. But I will do whatever I have to do to fend for my family. I'm not going to insist on a directorship post somewhere or a senior management role somewhere, which is where I came from, I would dig holes if I have to. And I will fend for my family. I will pay all that I need to pay. Has it always been smooth? No. But we've paid it all. Margaret has supported along the way. But by and large, I've done what I have to do. I drive thousands and thousands and thousands of miles every year to earn a few pounds. I drive over 40,000 miles a year. plus other job that I do on Zoom and other I just some months I'm just tired. I'm just knackered. If I was a drinking guy, you just want to get drunk and just waste yourself. But you wake up worse for it. And then money has gone down the drains, Work hard. It says, do it heartily. So when I jump in that car, I tell myself, do it heartily, Femi. Do it heartily. So there's some miserable patience you have to carry. Really miserable patience you have to transport. And I have to smile at them and answer them ever so sweetly. For there is neither work to do nor thoughts to think in the company of the dead, where you are most certainly headed. It reminds me, we're all going to die. I like this fella. Said, we are all going to die. So when you've worked hard, enjoy a little. That's part of why I've made a decision. Everything I make, everything I buy for myself, I'm just going to wear them. I used to save things for occasions. Actually, I've still got a pair of shoes there that have never been worn. Only one pair. They're about 2 years old. Only one pair that have never been worn. And I think, that's the one I will wear at Hadiz's wedding. Yeah. Because I just save this. You're going to die. You don't even know when. Sorry, I don't want to make anybody whatever here. But the truth, we've lived long enough to know that. Right? We've seen people die around us enough to know that you don't even know when. With all the best intention in the world. Sorry, Rena.
Yeah, you're gonna die.
No, she was looking sad. I thought maybe she was remembering David or something like that, but I probably judged her face wrongly.
Yeah, you're right.
Because you don't know when, with all the best intentions in the world. We all pray for long life in good health and prosperity. So it says, work hard, be disciplined, do it heartily, have vision, go for it, but enjoy yourself as well. Eat well, drink well, and enjoy yourself. That's first thing about finances, apart from those big overarching principles, which you should have got down pat by now. Okay, we're in the 37th minute. Let me cover a couple more things before finish. So we've done that. Work hard, enjoy yourself with your own money, your own wealth, preferably, not other people's money. There are some who are skilled at enjoying other people's money. The swindlers, the scammers. And some of them are friends as well. And some of you keep giving to them. But hey, it's your prerogative. It's your money. Give it where you want. Okay, the second thing that I want to talk to you about money, we've dealt with this before, is honoring and worshiping God with our money, with our finances and our wealth. Honor God and worship God with it. The Old Testament has several passages about that, especially, the tithe, this offering, that offering, that offering. Ours is actually a lot simpler, New Testament. Everything. It's worship God with everything. Proverbs 3, sorry, what?
Bringing the cooking oil.
Yes, bring the cooking oil. No thanks. Convert it to money first.
Next week it's cooking oil offering, is it?
There we go.
Yeah.
Unless there's a shortage again.
Tomato offerings, yeah. Proverbs 3:9. Honor the Lord from your wealth and from the first of all your produce. So your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will overflow with wine. Obviously, that's an agrarian community. The Passion Translation says, glorify God with all your wealth, honoring him with your very best, with every increase that comes to you. Then every dimension of your life will overflow with blessings from an uncontainable source of inner joy. The Amplified says, honor the Lord with your capital and sufficiency from righteous labors. I like that. Don't bring all your, drug money in here. Righteous labors. And with the first fruits of all your income, that's a real thing in some communities around the world where the druggies bring their money to church, for blessings. And some pastors are taking it, knowing fully well where it's coming from. But with the first fruits of your income, so shall your storage places will fill with plenty, and your vats will be overflowing with new wine. The key things here is honor and glorify God with all of your wealth, all of it, everything. So when we're thinking of what to do with our monies, we need to be thinking, how would God feel about that? That's how we honor him. A bit like when I go out, or, I was brought up thinking, remember whose child you are. My mom would always say, when she sent you off somewhere, remember whose name you bear. So I honor my parents by always remembering, what would they think about what I'm about to do here? Well, I tried to flip. I it was quite miserably at that, actually. I went through a period where actually I dishonored them on purpose. It was crazy. I've repented from all that. It's all funny now, but it was a real time in my life that I was just crazy. I was just really crazy. Thank God for saving me when it did. Things could have been really... But anyway, honor the Lord. Always think, what I'm doing with my money, how I'm handling money, is God happy with it? Have that at the back of your mind. Overarching principle. And then, from the first of all your produce, the first, think of him constantly, but also he should be the first that gets the first from everything we get. Okay? First in terms of priority and first in terms of quality. Priority, I think, when I get my pay, I think of God first. What can I do to honor God with this pay? Then in terms of quality as well, how much of this pay can I honor God with? Okay? First in terms of priority, first in terms of quality. Honor the Lord. Like I said, we've done this before. It's probably on video somewhere, on YouTube somewhere, I think. So that's what we honor the Lord. To honor someone is to regard him with great respect and to do it publicly. Secret honor is not honor. Honor is only honor when it's public. As in, you have witnesses. I don't mean you're standing in the town center. There are people who know that you're honoring that person. So honor only comes into its own when people are seeing you and recognizing that you're honoring somebody. Okay, now I'm not saying come spread all your offerings out here. I'm just saying that somebody needs to know that you're honoring God with your giving.
Wouldn't it be best for God to know?
Sorry?
God, doesn't it say that those things done in secret between you and God?
God knows everything anyway, right? So that's a bit moot. But I get the principle you're talking about. Your right hand should not even know what your left hand is doing when you give alms, etc., etc. That's true. But the church secretary should. I said, we should be able to rely on you if the church has a need.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
If you're never the one who steps up when the church has a need, which we've never really had here, then how do we know? How do we know? Give you a quick example. In our previous church, long time ago, before its current state and even the state it was in before we left, there was this guy who was actually the church treasurer. And at that time, they co-opted me into eldership. And the church was always in the red. You're always juggling between paying the bills, paying the pastor, who had 3 children, and a wife, the wife had to be working almost full time in order for them to make ends meet, and all this and all that. So after a couple of eldership meetings, I asked to see the books. Just, it's not a secret. Let's just see how things are running here. And we ran a system, rightly or wrongly, now anyone can debate if this is right or wrong, where you had tithe envelopes, a bit like we do with gift aid here, where there's an envelope with names on it. You'll notice when Tina, for instance, comes, she ruffles around, finds her envelope, and Rena has one. If you pay taxes, by the way, it's always best to gift aid you're given, then we can collect it back. Although there is...
Is that even on a pension?
Do you pay tax on your pension? Yeah, you can gift aid it, although there is a work around it anyway that I do work around, if you know what I mean, by government standards. But just using that as an example, yes, if you pay taxes on your pension, you can gift aid it, not just here, but anywhere else you give to. Sign a gift aid form so that they can get the taxes back on that giving. It adds to our giving. I just submitted a claim yesterday, for instance, for 2 years ago on all the giving we have, and it will come back. Sometimes it's 1,000, sometimes it's 1,500. It can actually be quite substantial, the gift aid returns on that. So anyways, we're at the meeting and we're looking at this, and everybody in church then that was giving by gift aid or covenantally had an envelope. So you had a way of giving so that it can be recorded for tax purposes. So we can actually say, this money we're claiming is because XYZ gave it. Now, some say that's wrong, some say that's right. Anyway, so we're going through, I just had a quick scan through the list, and I noticed fella's name was missing. The treasurer. His name is missing in all the lists. Well, it pops up now and again. So, me, rude person. So I asked, I said, guy's old enough to be my dad. I said, so, Pete, did you give? So he first tried to, flop me off with, it's nobody's business. So, well, everybody else's business is yours. Yeah. So anyway, we talked and pulled a bit, and it transpires that he only gives when he likes to. So I made a fuss. I made a fuss. I said, well, I don't think that sort of person should be handling our money. There's a spirit that comes with it, as far as I'm concerned. And cut a long story short, it almost split the church. In fact, some people left church when it became public, and they had factions over there and this and that, and they left church, and somebody else left church, and somebody else took over. Call it whatever you want. When that person took over, even with the number of people who left church, we ended up in the black.
Wow.
More people started giving more. I think we believed at that time that the evil spirit left with the fella. I don't mean necessarily a real, but the spirit about him, it was affecting the church as well. His own disposition was affecting the whole church. It carried an aura, if you like, about it. And when that left, people were free. And they gave more and more and more. So there's something about honor that is public, that somebody needs to. It's like marriages. There's no such thing as a secret marriage. It must be witnessed by at least one person, or you're not married. That's just how it is. Someone said, no, we got married between ourselves. No, and no. Even a mortgage has to be signed by witnesses. Witnesses that the bank does not know about, you find the witnesses, they sign it, and you send it back. Even passport forms have to be witnessed. They never come after the witnesses, but it has to be witnessed. Honor has to be witnessed. Biblical honor. So honor the Lord with your funds means that somebody, not necessarily the whole church, needs to be able to testify that, that person is so generous towards God. Maybe it's your husband, maybe it's your wife, maybe it's your children, maybe it's your best friend, maybe it's the church secretary. Somebody needs to be able to say, you are honoring God. All right. On an ongoing long-term basis. Okay, that's that bit. And I will end soon. We've only 48 minutes. Oh, just changed to 49. Just one more point. Along the lines of honor. It is still a voluntary tribute, by the way. It's a voluntary tribute, okay, based on an appreciation of that person's position and ability. So we appreciate God and we bring a voluntary tribute. If you look at the Old Testament, there was no secret gifts either. You brought it to the priests. Okay, somebody receives it. Somebody receives it on behalf of the Lord. Now, I'm not saying I want to receive your gifts. There's a basket there. You may or may not put it in envelopes as well. It's entirely your prerogative. The key point here is about honor. Okay, it's about honor. Worship. We worship God with our giving. It follows with the honor thing. And you've heard me talk about Abraham and Isaac. The first mention of the word worship in the Bible was when Abraham said to his servants, I am going to take this lad up to the mountain and we're going to worship God. And we all know what he meant when he said that. I'm sure Isaac is thinking, okay. And we'll be told that Isaac at that time was probably about 16, 17. He wasn't Timothy. He was a big, so he carried enough wood for a sacrifice with his old dad to go up a mountain. He was a strapping lad. But the point is that as far as Abraham was concerned, his most precious possession was what he was going to give back to God. Worship. And that's why the Old Testament specifies in some places that when you bring that offering, make sure it has no blemish. Make sure you're not bringing the runt of the pack. Make sure that you're bringing the best of the pack. When we're giving to God, when we're going to honor and worship Him, make sure in your own minds that you're doing something you think God will be pleased with. And yes, He knows your account. He doesn't know your account. We'll clarify some of these things a bit more as I go along. In conclusion about this first section of it, I'm not talking about the tithe. I don't ask New Testament believers to tithe. I don't believe it's a New Testament principle because there are other higher principles in the New Testament. But I do think it's a discipline, it's a safe way to begin a discipline. To give in a disciplined way. Not haphazardly. I say just how I feel today. I think everybody should determine what percentage of their income God deserves to have. I said deserve, that's probably the wrong word. That I want to honor God with. And stick to that percentage and only increase it. I myself do more than 10. I won't tell you exactly how much. Even with the little I earn. It's like I look at it sometimes and think, I need to do more than this. And perhaps that's why I make some of the crazy commitments that I do sometimes when I go away and I say, okay, we're going to send those girls to school. And then I come back, oh God, why did I say that? Now I'm committed. Come rain or whatever, I'm going to meet those dates. However, and of course it's from my pocket. So when you strain yourself like that, it shows discipline. And this is not just about this basket, by the way. We'll come to that one later. This is about the general way we deal with God with our giving. Whoa, a shiver, right? They used to say there was an angel passing or something like that. I don't know.
Spirit, yeah?
Yeah.
I thought it was spirit. That's the truth.
Yeah. And we'll deal with that later. But the way, not all of my giving, I'm not expecting all of your giving to honor God to be only through water springs. Okay? Let me set everybody free on that. There are only how many of us here. But that's not my expectation. So wherever else you give, and we'll look at those areas in a minute, what the Bible talks about. It doesn't mean that it's exhaustive. It just means that's what we can see. There are other ways you can be creative in giving and giving to based on all the basic foundational principles of it. So no, we're not talking about the tithe necessarily. New Testament enjoins generous, sacrificial, and cheerful giving. That's part of honor when you do it cheerfully. That's what 2 Corinthians 8 and 2 Corinthians 9 is all about. It says God loves a cheerful giver. And Jesus' example of the widow's mite in Mark chapter 12 because they looked at this fella who's giving so much, but only a part of what he has, and the widow gave everything she had. And Jesus said to his disciples, who do you think is giving more? Of course, it's a percentage thing. She's giving more. She gave 100%. That fella probably only gave 20%, which is still a sizable amount. Okay? So God, as far as our giving goes, is more about percentages. Okay? It's more about percentages. It's about measuring like that. In 1 Corinthians 16, it says that everyone should prepare their giving according as God has prospered them. So it's not something we should do senselessly. It's something we have to give good thought to, according as God has prospered them. So for instance, let's say, I even remember this. I was working part-time once somewhere, and I was earning X amount. And then, for a period of time, they offered me the job for full-time, limited, okay? So not only did my wage double for that period, because what they were offering me was also a step up. My wage also increased pro rata. Okay. Now you can imagine, hypothetically, if I was given 20 quid on my part-time job, and then my job became full-time and I carried on giving 20 quid. That would not represent how God has prospered me, would it? Not only He's doubled my wages, I haven't even moved from 20 quid. And I keep stressing this. I don't mean all in that basket. I mean all together. How we give because of God. Secondly, not only has it doubled my wages, He's actually increased it pro rata.
Yes.
If I carry on giving 20 quid, even if I gave 25, it still doesn't represent. So if I doubled it, that would be 40 quid, right? That might represent the doubling of my wages. But it doesn't represent two things. It doesn't represent the grace of God, the grace God has shown me in doubling my wages. Am I just going to match Him, fund matching? I'm just going to match Him. He doubled my wages, so I'll double my giving. It should be more than that, I think. There should be an element that says, well done, God. You doubled my wages. Because all you're doing, you're still giving the same amount in percentage terms. You're still giving the same amount, even though you doubled it in percentage terms. Where is the bit that says, well done, God, for doubling my wages? And where is the bit that says, well done, God, for increasing my wages pro rata? Do you see? So this takes some thinking. Honoring God takes thinking. This is my emphasis to believers all over the world, wherever I preach and touch on this subject. Paul said, as God has prospered you, you also prepare your giving. He talks about preparing it before I come. Don't just put anything in the basket when I'm here, Paul says. He says, think about it well in advance. What has God done for you? And how are you going to honor Him for what He has done? Can you even explain what He has done? A bit like I've just done here. Did He only double your wages? In which case, somebody needs to say, well done to Him. But did He also increase the wages while He was at it? In which case, somebody needs to say, well done to Him. Do we think like that? I remember when I came upon this, it was in Kingswood those many years ago, and I thought, no, I don't think like that. I actually don't think like that. I repaired it. I said, Lord, I'm sorry. I'll fix that. So now I actually quite think, I can never do much more than God does for me, but I want to do more than I did yesterday. So if I suddenly got a pay rise today, and it represents additional 50% of what I earn now, I'm not just going to double my giving. There's a certain percentage I hold in my head that I add to the doubling of my giving, just to say thank you for doubling my wages, because I never had that. People say, yeah, but it's so much more, but you didn't have it before and you were living okay with it. This is what I'm saying. If you had only 100 quid you were living on before, and God turns it to 200, and you used to give a tenner, let's work on the tithe, you used to give a tenner, and now you just suddenly give 20. You were living comfortably off 100. Now you have 200. What's 30 going to do to you? Because then you're not just doubling it, you're actually increasing your percentage. That extra 100 now, you're not just giving a 10 of it, you're giving 20 of it, you're left with 80. It's 80 more than you had before. You were living off 100 before. Or shall we say 90 because you gave a 10 of it. Are you with me on this? Is this making sense, Catherine? You were living off 90 before because you gave a tenner. Now you're earning 200. Are you just going to give 20 and live off 180? Or are you going to give 30 and live off 170? You never had that money before. Why is it suddenly a biggie now? You didn't have it before. And you were living off the less. Now you have more. Why are you going to hold on to this more? That's what that fella did that built more barns. He was living quite comfortably off what he had before. Now he had more, and he built more barns, closed the inn, and said, now I can relax, which is what many of us would do when our wages suddenly double. We say, whew, now I can relax. And God says, you're dying. Why? Why? Let's think of the why. Because he was not rich towards God. That's what Jesus said. Not because he made money. Not even because he built a bigger barn. But because he was not rich. He was not generous towards God. How can you be generous towards God? God doesn't need your money. But he was not generous in the things of God. You didn't have it before. If somebody suddenly gave me 50 quid I didn't have before, it's 50 quid I could easily pass on to you. Because actually I didn't have it before. And I was quite happy without it. You see? That's why we should guard against all forms of greed. Just because it's been given to me now that I didn't have before doesn't mean it's mine to rely on. Still, it says we should enjoy it. Gosh, I've preached for an hour today. It says you should enjoy it. Enjoy it, but remember to be generous towards God.